Greetings and salutations, guys. Rad Dreams here with Rad Dreams here on YouTube as well as Rad Dreams on Twitch. And today we're going to be covering the 2025 War of the Worlds film that has been receiving a lot of press as of late and not for anything positive. In fact, it's been quite the opposite. So I owed it to myself as well as you guys to write my own little review about it and see for myself, is it truly that bad? So sit back, relax. Here is my review of War of the Worlds 2025 starring Ice Cube. So this is a film directed by Rich Lee, written by Kenny Gold, Mark Hyman, as well as it's inspired by H.G. Wells and his novel from way back when. I believe it was 1897. But anyway, it stars, like I said, Ice Cube. It stars Eva Longoria, Iman Benson, Henry Hunter Hall, Clark Gregg, as well as many, many others. So, as I mentioned earlier, this was originally a science fiction novel by H.G. Wells in 1897 that depicted an invasion of sorts. Not of sorts, it was a full blown out invasion of a technologically superior, alien race. It was an unknown entity from outer space, and over time we would see this story, get multiple iterations. Most famously, Orson Welles, no relation to H.G. Wells. Same pronunciation, different spelling though on their last names. Fun fact. He did a 1938 radio broadcast which adapted the original story, and it actually caused widespread panic, back in those days, because a lot of folks tuning into this radio broadcast didn't realize that it was in fact fake. They thought it was the real deal. They're like, oh shit, we're getting invaded by a unknown force from outer space. Oh my god. So that was probably the most famous iteration for sure. And one could say that this new film did indeed cause widespread panic, but not in the way that you would think. It caused panic by how bad it was. So in all aspects, really, this film is kind of like circling the drain in the kitchen sink. It keeps on coming around and around and around. And this film has all of the heart pumping action and suspense and thrill of somebody who's running late to a Microsoft Teams meeting, in all honesty. And furthermore, it's while watching it, I couldn't help but feel that it was a love letter to Amazon by how much it was jerking itself off. Pardon the crudeness, but there was so much product placement in this film for Amazon. You had drones, you had two specific dialogue lines, one of which by Ice Cube and another, I believe, by his son. I could be wrong about that, but there's two instances in the film where you literally have the line, there's more things we gotta be worried about than spying on what's inside people's Amazon shopping carts. Something to that effect. That was like almost verbatim the dialogue line that appeared in the movie. And speaking of the dialogue, it felt like it was written by artificial intelligence, by how terrible the writing was, how deadpan it was, how emotionless it was, how robotic it felt. And so there's a lot wrong with this film. It fails in all aspects, in my opinion, as a piece of entertainment, and it never even entered into the category of so bad that it's good, right? So when I talk about that, I'm talking about things like The Room, starring Tommy Wiseau. That is a terrible freaking movie, but it kind of falls into that, again, elusive category of so bad that it's good, right? I can watch The Room and be entertained, but I cannot watch War of the Worlds again and feel any sort of enjoyment for it. There's maybe one positive aspect about the film that I will touch on later in the review, so stay tuned. So when we talk about War of the Worlds 2025, you have to talk about the choice of how it was filmed, right? The cinematography, right? So instead of a traditional film technique, the director decided that it would be a great idea and would be more advantageous to put Ice Cube in front of his computer screen. And then it would jump cut on his computer screen, from a close up to him, as well as his computer program windows that were littered about the screen. So imagine you, the viewer, watching this video right now, and you almost see pop ups: left hand corner, right hand corner, bottom left, bottom right, middle. They were propagated all over, mouse pointer and all. This choice felt very akin to watching somebody with, attention deficit disorder or ADHD, attention deficit hyper disorder. The audience's gaze, especially mine, kept on shifting from one portion of the screen to another. It was extremely busy and it was very hard to focus. I suffer from ADHD myself, and I found it extremely difficult to maintain my attention. Combined with the acting, which was pretty much non-existent, it was a recipe for disaster, which is honestly a shame because the actors that appear in this have done good work in the past. So they can act. They can. It's just for some reason, due to the direction that they received, it kind of, fell short. There was, like I said earlier, a distinct lack of emotion, even with the looming threat of destruction, the potential death of Ice Cube's family, and many other high stress situations. Every single actor had a deadpan delivery. And along with this, the actors, not only Ice Cube was doing this, but others were doing this, they were narrating their actions, which made it seem like I was watching a, almost like a video game live stream or a recording of somebody playing a extremely subpar early 2000s video game. Right? So every actor kept on saying things like, now watch this. And then they would proceed to do their action and then kind of go into detail as to what they are doing. It was the purest form of hand holding that I've seen in a film in quite some time. It was extremely infuriating because instead of showing, they were literally telling. Literally. And the reason why I said it looked like a subpar video game from the 2000s is because that kind of segues into the computer generated effects, or CGI for short. For a film that boasts a $65 million budget and being helmed by Amazon, the effects look very dated. The not robots, but the alien force or the unknown entity from outer space, a lot of them looked very blocky, choppy, kind of fuzzy. You could clearly see that the CGI was lacking in a lot of scenes when it displayed these creatures from outer space. It was not quite as bad as the original Power Rangers film, but it was still pretty bad and very noticeable. And when you compare it to War of the Worlds from 20 years ago, starring Tom Cruise, you can kind of see how far the effects have strayed. Granted, that film's budget 20 years ago was more expensive, but still the fact remains the quality of the effects were lacking, especially when you kept on being tunneled through a computer screen as the main form of filming, right? So the other thing that went in addition to this was the lack of soundtrack. So during the course of the entire film, there was a distinct lack of that, right? So when a catastrophic invasion was happening, nothing. When people were narrating, when robots were attacking, when anything really, there was not a lot of score, music, anything. It was just the sounds of the things happening. But sure, whatever. That is not my biggest complaint. One of my bigger complaints was the script writing. The dialogue, like I said, was very uninspired and lazy. As I mentioned before, the whole quote unquote now watch this kind of makes you want to bang your head against the wall. And at least for me. And you, like I said, it was sprinkled in with that product placement that I mentioned earlier. The force feeding of lines when they were promoting Amazon products felt very, very inorganic. And then finally, like the film was only an hour and 30 minutes long, but it felt like it moved at a snail's pace, especially at the beginning. So the first 30 minutes of the film was, very, very lackluster. It was setting up a B plot that was kind of hit or miss. Introduced his, spoiler alert, his son as this notorious hacker that was trying to spread the word about this, software program called Goliath. That it just, I don't know, for the B plot that it was setting up, it was very, very mid. I hate saying that word mid, but that's what it was. Then the remaining runtime was relegated to the alien or foreign entity invasion from outer space and the kind of subsequent quelling of that, or repelling of that invasion. So the one positive thing that I will say about War of the Worlds is that it was a commentary on the war on data, with the United States government and how they're getting more and more access to our data. Companies are getting more and more access to our data. So I felt like it was kind of a commentary on that, especially towards the end of the film, because Ice Cube, joined in the resistance for that, as a way to combat against Goliath. That it was a software that allowed you to kind of predict human behavior, monitor humans, whether it be their cell phones, whatever. It was basically like Big Brother to the extreme, right? And you had the message at the end of the film with Ice Cube saying, "The government's not gonna watch me. I'm gonna watch you." Stuff like that. And before I go into the conclusion, I have to mention there was, I believe, 2 or 3 moments where Ice Cube accomplished a task or something, and then he had a Staples "that was easy" button, if you remember that from way back when. That hasn't really been relevant in how many years? And they use that as kind of like a joke device. I don't know, but I thought that was kind of lame that they used the Staples "that was easy" button, and it just felt very, very weak and kind of cringy. So to kind of tie this up into a fancy little bow, if you want to call it that, War of the Worlds 2025 is technically classified as a thriller. However, the only thrilling aspect of it was when it was over. And I cannot, in good conscience, recommend this to anybody. Even if you're curious to see how bad it is, trust me when I say it's literally not worth it. You can, kind of skip this one, guys. So overall, not a good film. Overall rating, I would probably give it a 1 out of 10. If I was feeling generous, which I'm not, I would give it a 1.5 out of 10. But yeah, it's pretty bad. Not even, like I said, B movie bad or so bad it's good, right? So with that being said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this review over War of the Worlds. If you did in fact watch this, what did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let me know in the comments below. Is there anything that you would like to see me review in the future? Please let me know, and feel free to drop a like on the video as well as subscribe to the channel and check me out on Twitch at rad_dreams. I like to play a lot of games there, so feel free to check that out, guys, and I will see you in the next one. All right, so make sure you stay safe out there, and above all else, make sure you stay rad. Take care.